Welcome everyone to This Week in Crypto with CoinRoutes. It is Friday, December 15th. Let's get started right away with the markets.
Thanks,
Carl.
Dave. Thank you. So we saw Bitcoin and ETH sell off a bit, especially towards the end of the week. The dollar also sold off a bit. We saw altcoins like Bonk and some other, meme coins have many multiples, up 200% on the week and 1,000% on the month. The S&P up 2.5%. The US 30 pushing new highs, same with the Dow Jones. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Well, we're also seeing some serious altcoin rotation. With ETH down, Solana up, coins like Injective and AVAX all doing very, very well.
Yeah.
This is not your garden variety sell-off. This is more a crypto rotation than it is anything else, don't you think?
Yeah. As I predicted last week.
Yeah, and look, we're still at the bottom of a range on Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're still well above the old range. Support is now, resistance is now support. And honestly, the most bullish thing that could happen to the crypto market is to kind of stay in this level until January. I don't think that will happen, but I do think that would be the most bullish thing because essentially, we saw some really strange stuff in liquidations this past week too.
Yeah.
Right?
Something I found very interesting, right? The dollar sold off heavily this week, but you saw Bitcoin, other than the flash crash that one day, which got quickly rebounded and recovered, gold was massively up following the FOMC announcement. And Bitcoin really wasn't in parity with gold or with the dollar. So
Sure.
Interesting to see that, and then interesting to also see how alts reacted to the sell-off as well.
Dave, why do you think that Bitcoin staying in this range is bullish ahead of the ETF?
Well, look, at the end of the day, the people who were the consistent bid, some people refer to it on crypto Twitter as the hand of God bid, but I don't believe that by any stretch of the imagination. I think those bids are from more patient buyers, and Bitcoin had a very, very strong rally long before any of this happened. And so they're not going to keep chasing against themselves, and speculators tend to go up and down. Look, markets are very capricious at times, but a couple of things that always happen. When there's a very large rally, when it doesn't have a 50% retracement of that rally, it tends to fall harder at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And if you actually do the math and you say, well, Bitcoin was in the low 30s and it rallied to 44, and you do that, and you say, oh, okay, well, pick your number, $12,000 worth, cut that in half, $6,000, and that would mean support is anywhere from 38 to 42, depending on how you do, what timing and how you measure a 50% retracement. It's more or less in line with that. Now, the dollar getting whacked because of the second news story we're going to talk about, it is interesting. And we've seen this sort of thing before where Bitcoin will shrug off macro news that it looked like it had predicted it. Whether it didn't, but that sort of thing happens. But let's get into the news because we had a few really important stories this week. So let's start, Jacob, with the Ledger phishing attack. And just to set it up, just so people don't know what happened if you're under a rock someplace, an ex-employee of Ledger was allowed to put something into their GitHub repository, which implanted more or less a drainer software that could then be spread from Ledger to other distributed applications.
Yeah, look, there's two ways to look at it. One is the fearful way, and obviously cold storage is crypto's safe haven. People believe taking it off exchanges is the best way to keep your crypto. I tend to align with that viewpoint. But with hacks like this, it's very worrisome. The positive side of it, it was handled efficiently. The wallet was actually frozen, the one that was responsible for the hack. And at the end of the day, it was human error too. It was a Ledger employee fell victim to a phishing attempt.
Yep.
So it just proves, no one's invincible. You have to always safeguard. Since we are supporting a DeFi product now, we actually told people to not connect Ledger whatsoever. So taking proactive steps was necessary. I'm glad it got dealt with quickly.
Yep.
And the fallout is yet to be seen. Are people going to trust Ledger in the future? Now, this isn't the first time this company has had a news story of this nature before.
Yeah.
So
just to piggyback on that, what this really speaks to is mitigating your risk by distributing your portfolios across different avenues, right? We see FTX and massive conglomerates going down. You really want to mitigate that risk by putting your coins in different places and whatnot.
We're not just trusting one hardware platform.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
Yep.
So.
The other big thing here for people to understand is separate out your cold storage from your hot storage.
Yeah.
Exchanges have been doing this forever, but the truth of the matter is most human beings don't trade around their entire portfolio. They have core holdings that effectively you're not going to touch, or if you're going to touch it, you're going to touch it every few months. And then you have another portfolio which you can trade. So if you're trading in DeFi, do you want to have your main wallet with all your assets connected to an exchange, or you're trading 5% of your assets? Absolutely not. And being lazy and having one wallet doing that could potentially be costly, and that's what this is saying. So segregate your trading capital from your valued capital and do it that way. And look, that's what we say. And if you look at what CoinRoutes does, our smart contract was unaffected, of course, but the truth of the matter is we only have trading-only keys. But that doesn't mean that someone who connected a ledger to our software and then connected to other places couldn't potentially have had an issue if this had gone on for some period of time. So there's lots of steps people can take, and we have people in our company who will be happy to talk to anyone who's really curious about this.
Absolutely.
Okay, next big news story, of course, was the Fed pivot. Now, was it a pivot or not? I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, he didn't cut rates, but saying that the rates could get cut as many as 3 times seemed like a pretty big deal to me.
Yeah. It was interesting to see some of the inflation statistics. Something positive to note about the inflation statistics. Housing looks like it's finally slowing down. The sticky category, though, is services. And those typically never fall, right? Because once people raise their prices, it's very rare a business is going to go back and cut their, So it's kind of a mixed blend of it. Hopefully inflation's slowing. I think the market's definitely reacted to it as if rates had been cut. And sometimes that's the most important thing.
Some markets did. But, the funny thing is two points that I always want to make here. One is political. We'll talk about that last. But the first one is markets tend to sell off when the Fed starts cutting rates. That is just a simple fact that you can go through. My friend James Lavish likes to talk about this on our Macro Monday podcast. But when the Fed starts cutting, it's generally because they're saying, uh-oh, we got a problem, Houston. So the markets didn't sell off. The markets are like, oh, okay, it's going to be smooth sailing into the future. The only one that didn't react that way is Bitcoin, which arguably should be the one that should have. So it's kind of hard to know how to make of all this. But I think that's interesting, right? The other thing that's interesting is how many of our viewers, we wish we could do a poll in this, actually believe that there was no relationship between Powell saying what he did and Biden coming out several days before in multiple magazines in a speech saying we think the Federal Reserve should cut rates. Anyone who thinks there's no relation? What do you guys think?
I mean, it's hard to make that argument. I think there was absolutely a relation. To the degree is yet to be seen, I think.
Right. Look, I've been saying this for a long time. Election years, you're not going to see the Federal Reserve be the cause of the economy to tip into recession. And I think that there's just too much pressure on them not to do it. So we'll see what happens. But it looks like the end of the rate hike cycle is upon us. And as a result, that gets one more macro potential headwind out of the way for crypto assets. Next big story, and this one's actually a very big deal in the long run. In the short run, and that is the FASB rules. So FASB, very technical, the Federal Accounting Standards Board. Basically, they came out with official guidance that said that any company who wants to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet from this day forward, starting from the next fiscal year, so any company whose fiscal year starts in January can do this. Anyone who and over the course of the year, as fiscal years change, they can do it. What does it mean? It means that in the past, before this change, if you held Bitcoin on your balance sheet, it had to be held at the lowest price that Bitcoin traded, or any crypto for that matter, traded from the time that you bought it. Meaning you get no credit for upside.
So there's absolutely no reason why a company would want to have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I mean, there's negative reason,
Right. So Michael Saylor had, 2,000 people, give or take? 2,000 people. 2,000 CFOs and CEOs come talk to him about why Bitcoin on the balance sheet makes sense. Basically, nobody adopted it. Well, the reason is because the board of directors is saying, are you kidding me? It's going to make our financials look like crap. So, but that's changing. So that's a very big deal. And, just like the Bitcoin ETF, it's yet another thing that is necessary for Bitcoin to be digital gold.
Yeah.
And that kind of matters.
What type of other assets followed that accounting structure?
I'm not sure. It's generally intangible stuff. For all we know, it's art. I don't know. I don't want to guess.
Sure.
What I know is not stocks, not bonds, not precious metals, not hedge fund stakes, not private company stakes. All of those are marked to market. Now, obviously, private company stakes, market is kind of murky, but that's a topic for another day.
Right, but now companies out there who wanted Bitcoin to be on their balance sheet, who didn't have the incentive before because, they wanted to make their books look strong, are able to do so.
Correct.
Call it what you want, call it a commodity, call it a financial asset. Bitcoin belongs in that category
Mhm.
That's
and
right.
should be accounted
Absolutely.
for as the same, right? It's
That's
definitely
right.
not hard.
As my friend Scott Melker said, this is one the government got right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
that's a good thing. So speaking of things that are interesting, the other story, the second to last story is Tether. I phrase it as bends the knee to OFAC. And basically Tether has said, listen, that they will play ball with the government and freeze accounts of suspected money launderers and terrorists.
I'm curious to know what you guys think about this, because the fact that now Tether has control with their market share, which is something like 70% on exchange, and cumulative volumes of over $3 trillion, right? What do you guys think about Tether having such governance control over? I don't know. It kind of
It's fascinating. They've gained a lot
Yeah.
versus USDC, which was perceived as the most regulatory, safe option. Look, the reality is Tether is a unique business story because of bad regulation and has crushed banking rails. People find it harder to use dollars, particularly outside the United States. So the demand for Tether, or people are willing to give up 5% of interest in order to be able to buy and sell crypto. And as a result, Tether makes a lot of money and is a huge buyer of treasuries, which of course endears them to other parts of the government. And don't forget that. So that kind of matters. In the long run, will we end up with a sane approach where stable coins that actually do have yield will start to compete with Tether? Yeah, at some point that will happen.
Yeah.
At some point we'll have sane banking relationships to the crypto world too, but we don't have that right now.
So to play devil's advocate, obviously the story at face value is resoundingly positive. But to play devil's advocate, do you guys ever think there's a situation where maybe the government has too much control now, where they say we should freeze this account and maybe the investigation
this is what
not
scares me.
complete?
It's exactly what scares me.
Right.
Really.
So
I have often said that a CBDC, where the government is judge, jury, executioner, and can program, is the most dystopian thing the government can do.
Yeah.
I've said this, and anyone who doesn't agree with me, okay, that's fine, but find a government that's given power that doesn't use it to the full extent of what it wants to do, including going after political enemies, including silencing free speech, including cutting people out of the financial system. It's a financial death sentence. Now, if we have private companies that are all competing with each other, that are all listening to the government on a level one, is that troubling? Yeah, because the fact of the matter is the government doesn't necessarily have to have the full standard of proof that you might want to in terms of going in front of a judge and getting a warrant.
Yep.
But if it's private companies, expect that information to come out and expect it to be, if they do abuse the power, there's at least a chance that people will be able to know about it and object to it.
We,
So it's a little
we
bit
all
better.
are rooting for adoption here, and this is sort of what mainstream adoption looks like, right? It's a give and pull, push and take, whatever it is, right? I mean, this is what adoption looks like, and at some point, regulators need to get involved. And doing it with such a large party like Tether, I mean, this is just what we'd expect.
Well, it also potentially decreases the odds of Tether getting destroyed by regulation or by regulators or the global cops. And I don't believe that's highly likely right now, but there are people out there who have been calling for that for a long time.
the interesting part of the story, I think, is that if you look at different nations, the degree at which certainty is needed to freeze a bank account varies globally.
Yeah,
right?
in the U.S., you can get it frozen for nothing, right? Just for suspected
And
behavior.
some may have better banking laws. So
Yeah.
where in that spectrum will Tether fall? And who are they? I mean, the U.S. government
Right.
debatably is one of the
I
most
think-
powerful, right? So
I don't know that we know that, but I know that what we do know is we do have the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. And it does mean that if actions are taken that are completely capricious, eventually those things get found out. Is that enough protection? Honestly, it's not where I would draw the line, but it is where other people are drawing the line.
Sure.
And that's kind of what matters. I mean, it's like, look, do I like going through airport security that probably isn't doing a whole lot and making me have to get to the airport earlier than I otherwise would want? No. Do we put up with it? Yes. And are we likely to see it change anytime soon? No. I view this more or less the same.
If you don't like it, you could just use a different stablecoin also.
Well, that's right. You could, but eventually don't expect stablecoins to really succeed without some sort of regulatory oversight. I mean, look, the way I look at it, because last week we talked about this is idiotic rule which would make miners have to do KYC when they don't know the people to the transaction. So it's really, essentially it was a really badly written bill, and that Elizabeth Warren is pushing in. Look, the fact of the matter is there will be some form of KYC. The most logical way to look at crypto transactions is the same way we look at cash. Why? They're both bearer instruments. You go to a casino, you can use these things as cash, right? But otherwise it's the green pieces of paper that are very hard to counterfeit. The fact is, you used to be able to take a briefcase full of cash and go buy a house. Can't do that anymore. Someone's going to report it. It's not going to work.
It's hard to get a briefcase of cash from the bank nowadays.
Well, that's right. They don't want to give it to you. I mean, that is true too. But the point is that over $10,000 transactions, generally speaking, are subject to reporting. There is no reason to believe that crypto is going to end up being anything different. Now, should it be $600 like they tried to do last year with PayPal stuff? And the answer is no. That makes no sense. But there's going to be some sort of compromise, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And it's what we want. I don't know. I personally think, well, I'm more libertarian than most. So we'll leave that as it may. Last story. This is in the heavy-duty eye roll story. The SEC, on a 3-2 partisan vote, rejected Coinbase's petition for rulemaking, saying the same tired old arguments. Crypto doesn't need new rules. Our rules from the 40s are good enough, and we know it's a crypto security. Even though they can't answer it under oath whether Ether is a crypto security, we know it's a crypto security, and we're not going to tell you what they are, but we know what it is. And predictably, there was a very well-written dissent by the two Republican commissioners, Hester and Mark. And look, we all know what we think. The fact is, this is going to play out in court, whether it's a court suit on this petition or in the Coinbase and Kraken now lawsuits from the SEC.
Yep.
I hate talking about this stuff at this point. It's just the
Sounds like a broken record at this. I mean,
really
does.
Well, listen, I think that what's so great is this is all just bullish, right? The fact that Bitcoin is in the spotlight and cryptos in general are in the spotlight of the government and regulatory agencies, and every hedge fund in the world wants to get this on their balance sheet now. This is bullish. This is what adoption looks like, and it's exciting for people like us who work in the industry and have been waiting for adoption to occur for the past 5-6 years since I've known about it. So, it's exciting and bullish. Obviously, all these small things are annoying, but whatever, right? We get through it.
I mean, the fact that it's needing to be addressed and that it's finally being addressed.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. We are clearly in the then they fight you stage, and it looks like that stage is coming towards the end of that stage. So that's where we want to be.
Yeah.
And with that happy note,
I'm all in on crypto.
I call. In any case, time for predictions before we sign off.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about also what we thought about the price action this week and then what we can expect heading into Christmas.
Yeah.
So why don't you guys go ahead?
Sure. I mean, Bitcoin, it's sort of just range bound. This has been historically a spot where Bitcoin has fought, right, as resistance coming up. And then support coming down. So I don't know. I mean, I think we probably hang out here for a bit longer. We've seen meme coins and whatnot rally, so expect that to continue, and hopefully we rise.
I mean, we're 1 week into out of large cap into altcoin rotation. That's what we are.
Yep.
Generally, those last 2 to 3 weeks before either a correction or a next level up for the large caps.
Yep.
I think Bitcoin is clearly leading Ethereum in the large cap race, although Ethereum has its proponents. I don't see any reason to believe it will change, so I would not be surprised. And I'm not sure if we're going to do a recap next week during Christmas week, but we'll see. The truth is going into New Year's, I would not be terribly surprised to see us stay in a range. Lots of things could happen. between now and then, right? You know, not the whole world celebrates our holidays the way we celebrate our holidays, and we've had some pretty interesting ends of Decembers in the history of crypto. So I think the most likely scenario is we stay where we are with more of this sort of rotation going on until the beginning of January, in which case I suspect you will, if it does stay, if that actually comes to pass, I think the beginning of January could be quite bullish, but we'll see.
I think a lot of people are waiting for this ETF trigger. And personally, I don't think it's going to be as big of a reaction as people are expecting. Right? I won't even be surprised to see a sell-off permanently bearish. But something that does make me bullish, on the other hand, to play both sides, is that you're seeing this rotation into what we call shitcoins, right? And it's not the true bottom of the barrel pink sheets in my mind yet. I mean, some of these tokens do have real utility. But I think the next step might be seeing some of these dog name coins, Shiba getting time in the sun again, right? So, like you said, the rotation typically goes Bitcoin and Ether, the majors, to the larger cap altcoins, Solana's, the AVAX's, into some of the ones with utility, right? Like Bonk, some of these Solana.
AI game coins, and then into your...
Right.
Into the meme coins.
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, you know, portfolio repositioning happens this month, and we'll see what happens in January. I have strong opinions on what will likely happen with the Bitcoin ETF, but those opinions depend completely upon where the price is. If Bitcoin is 60,000, but the day before it gets approved, I have a very different answer to if Bitcoin is trading at 38, 39, or 40,000. And so let's wait until January, we can talk about it. But there are many cross currents there, and as we get closer to that date, I think it's time for a more in-depth discussion.
The opportunity nonetheless.
Yeah, either way.
Always is. The one thing that's certain is there's more volatility than there used to be, than used to be in the last several months. Even the little moves are up and down hundreds of dollars on Bitcoin. The spreads, we could talk about that. They are all over the place, and the market is interesting right now. It has a lot of motion, and that's good for us. It's good for traders, and just stay safe because liquidity sometimes does drop off this period of time.
One last question for you both, just to pivot to, and this is for some of our users that aren't necessarily crypto native. What do you guys think of the S&P, the NASDAQ right now? Looks like it's about to hit all-time highs. Do you think it's a blow off top? Do you think we see continuation? What is your guys' take on the traditional financial markets?
You want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. Look, I think that what we're seeing is equities that have less exposure to potential recession risk, i.e., you know, things that will see their value is more on the story side, more on the future potential side. The so-called Magnificent Seven are performing the lion's share of the work to push the markets higher, and I think that is not surprising in an environment where there is going to be less less Federal Reserve, impedance to markets going up. But also at the same time, we are seeing cracks in credit. The BTFP, that facility that we all talked about earlier last year, when the banking crisis happened, is back at an all-time high of drawdowns. There are issues with consumer credit that matter, and these are the reasons why the Federal Reserve is cutting. I expect to see a significant market correction where the correction will be bigger on names that are more sensitive to the business cycle in the first quarter or second quarter when the Fed starts cutting. I will be really surprised if this time is different, because I don't think this time is different generally happens. I think that when the Fed starts cutting, it's because the market is dropping and the market looks at it as saying, uh-oh, maybe this is a reason.
It smells
here.
blood in the water.
That's right. So, but right now, I mean, it's hard to not be invested, right? And so a lot of people are looking that way. And between now and the end of the year, is anything going to change? Unless there's something bad geopolitically, and God knows, we've weathered a lot of geopolitical storms.
Yeah.
I mean, the Suez Canal gets blocked up. Okay, that's going to cause major issues. But apart from something that's a major geopolitical event, and I think we're, maybe we are where we are at the end of the year and we move into January. People worry about the January effect. I don't know. I'm much more bullish on Bitcoin because of its basic counter narrative to the government. I think people's trust in government, if this election continues to play out the way it is.
Well, Bitcoin plays both sides, right? When the S&P goes down, I mean, we tend to think that Bitcoin's going to play a parity role and rally in that situation, and then when risk assets go up, so does Bitcoin. So in either case, I think look at the market. It always goes up, and I think we just had a massive correction coming off the COVID highs, and so that's what kind of we can continue to expect.
Yeah, and the other asset you didn't talk about is gold. I think that gold will do well next year. I think Bitcoin will just do better. It's really that simple.
Yeah. Awesome.
You?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I tend to agree with you guys. I could see a situation where it's a little bit of a blow off top. I mean, everyone, when it's as high as it's ever been, and there's not a sentiment of a healthy economy right now. I mean, not necessarily. Right.
To be contrarian on that, though, I will tell you, bull markets climb the wall of worry. A
Oh.
blow off top is when when you jump into an Uber and the driver says, "So what stocks do you like?" And if you think that doesn't happen, it does.
It does.
When that happens, that's when
Hammer the sell
that is
button.
literally that's when you take the money and you're like, okay, I want to
Rack
take it
up
in.
your
You're
chips.
racking them up and you're
Get the hell out
going
of
to the
there.
bank.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, on that happy note, we'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining, and don't forget, smash the like button and subscribe.
Thanks, guys.